Praveen Kumar has previously been introduced by Dr. Mahendranath. He is a young, enthusiastic immunologist and rheumatologist who's trained at NIMS Hyderabad. He has recently joined at Chandray along with Dr. Chandrasekhar's team. He's going to talk to us today about the rheumatoid arthritis, its diagnosis and management. Dr. Praveen Kumar?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
So kindly share your slides, sir.
Yeah, is it visible, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Dr. Chandrasekhar sir for giving this opportunity to present. Today, my topic for discussion will be the reactive arthritis. So, I will be covering this topic under these headings: the definition, epidemiology, clinical feature, and the diagnosis and the treatment, and what are the differential diagnoses. Coming to the definition, it's basically an inflammatory arthritis along with the other manifestation which occurs subsequent to an extra-articular infection, typically of GA origin or a genitourinary origin, or uncommonly a respiratory tract. So most common GA pathogens are Salmonella typhi, Virium, and Shigella vaccinare, Campylobacter jejunum. The most common genitourinary organism is the Chlamydia trachomatis, followed by the Uroplasma erythemicum. And there are respiratory pathogens which are very uncommon, mostly the virus. And of late, we are seeing case reports even COVID also. So coming to the epidemiology, it's typically a sporadic disease, but occur in increased frequency. There is a outbreak. So the global incidence is found to be 0.6 to 30 per thousand individuals, and it also varies depending upon the pathogens and also geography, and also the prevalence of HLA-B27. For example, in Scandinavian countries like in North Europe, where the HLA-B27 prevalence is higher, the incidence of reactive arthritis is more. But as well as compared to the Asian countries, where the HLA-B27 prevalence is less than in countries like Malaysia and Philippines, the reactive arthritis incidence is lower. And the other thing is even though the HLA-B27 prevalence is lesser in South African countries, but the HIV incidence is more. The reactive arthritis which occurs to the secondary to the HIV has become more common in sub-African regions. And also the risk of development of reactive arthritis differ between the genitourinary and GA infection. So the risk is about 1 to 1.5% after gastrointestinal infection, whereas 4 to 8% after genital chlamydial infection. The usual age group which are affected are the younger age group with a peak of 20 to 29 years. And the risk of infection, reactive arthritis is more in men, secondary to genital infection when compared to the women. But the risk is similar in gastrointestinal infection. Coming to the cause and the risk factors. So usually it's a self-limiting cause. In the majority of the cases, it will resolve spontaneously, and it usually begins 1 to 3 weeks after the genitourinary or gastrointestinal infection. And in about 20 to 30%, it goes for chronic chronicity. That is, chronic arthritis is defined as more than 6 weeks duration. And the predictors which predicts the chronicity of the disease is HLA-B27 and chronic gut inflammation and family history of spondyloarthritis. HLA-B27, apart from predicting the chronicity, it also predicts the severity and axial manifestation. Which is similar to like in other ankylosing spondylitis, where it predicts the axial manifestation and extra-articular manifestation. So the primary infection which triggers the reactive arthritis presents as urethritis as the most common presentation in the men, and in the women it presents as a cervicitis. So the gastrointestinal pathogens will usually present as a mild diarrhea and fever in case of Salmonella enteritis and Salmonella typhi Virium, whereas the Shigella presents as an acute dysentery. So the clinical manifestation has a both articular and extra-articular part, and it is usually defined by the classic triad of arthritis, urethritis, and conjunctivitis, as first described by the Hans Retes, who was one of the physicians in the Nazi camp, and it was named after him. This constellation, this triad is seen in only minority of patients. The term Retes syndrome was replaced with the reactive arthritis. And in arthritis, it's the most common manifestation is oligoarthritis, which is seen in 70%, which is a lower limb predominant, either a mono or oligoarticular and asymmetric, followed by the monoarticular, which is seen in 15%, which is followed by the polyarticular, which is seen in 15%. And other manifestations are inflammatory back pain and sacroiliitis. And enthesitis, the most common affected sites are Achilles tendon or the plantar fasciitis. And dactylitis seen in up to 40% of the cases, and most commonly in the lower limbs. The extra-articular manifestation, we have a variety of manifestation, which includes genitourinary, which there is a urethritis in 80%, followed by prostatitis, and the cervicitis is most common in the female, followed by the salpingophoritis and cystitis. Patient can have the painless after ulcers, and the typical cutaneous manifestation is a keratoderma bilinearegica, which is a maculopapular lesion, which is usually seen in the lower limb, and also succinate balanitis, which is seen in the men in up to 40% of the cases. And erythema nodosum also reported, but it's usually rare compared to these two manifestations. So sometimes the patient may present to the dermatologist with this cutaneous manifestation. Then later we can, which will lead to give a clue to the diagnosis. So after coming to ophthalmic manifestation, conjunctivitis is seen up to 50%, and it's seen mainly in the acute reactive arthritis. Whereas anterioritis is the most common ocular manifestation in chronic reactive arthritis. So cardiac manifestation, we have 3 different manifestations which are seen. Aortic valve insufficiency and outmark seen in acute reactive arthritis, whereas pericarditis is usually seen in a chronic reactive arthritis. So the cardiac is an uncommon manifestation compared to the other manifestations. So this is the diagram showing the multiple macular lesion over the palm, which is keratoderma bilinearegica. So how we go with the diagnosis? Basically, it's a combination of both the clinical and laboratory test, after which we conclude the diagnosis. So there's a 4th international workshop on reactive arthritis in Berlin, Germany, 1999, where they proposed this preliminary diagnostic criteria, which has both a major criteria and a minor criteria. The major criteria has 2 components, which I said previously. The arthritis is typically asymmetric, low limb predominant, monoarthritis or oligoarthritis. So among this, the 2 should be present, and along with that, there should be a preceding symptomatic infection with one of the 2 of the following findings. One is enteritis, which is defined as a diarrhea at least for a day, 3 to 6 days, 6 weeks before the onset of arthritis. So you can see as short duration as 3 days and as long as 6 weeks. You need to ask the history, and we should be careful in asking these histories when we see the arthritis patient who presents with a lower limb predominant arthritis. So urethritis, which is defined as either dysuria or a discharge at least for a day, 3 days to 6 weeks before the onset of arthritis. The other minor criteria is there should be an evidence of triggering infection, which is proved by either positive nucleic acid amplification test in a morning urine or urethral or a cervical swab for chlamydia trachomatis, a positive stool culture for enteric pathogen associated with reactive arthritis, such as Salmonella, Shigella, and Campylobacter, and evidence of persistent synovial infection, which is provided by the positive result on immunohistologic analysis or a PCR assay for chlamydia in the synovial tissue. So for a definitive diagnosis, both the major criteria should be there, along with the one relevant minor criteria. Relevant in the sense, if the patient has enteritis, then they should have a positive nucleic acid amplification test. If they have enteritis, they should have the positive stool culture. If they have urethritis, they should have a positive nucleic acid amplification test. So probable reactive arthritis is if the patient has both the major criteria but no relevant minor criteria, or one major criteria and one or more minor criteria. That is considered as a probable reactive arthritis. So the serological test, as I told previously, is a nucleic acid amplification test for chlamydia in early morning urine or urogenital swab. And also there is one study by Sharma et al. In Indian population where they used urinary PCR and found out that 36% of reactive arthritis a patient had a urinary PCR positive for chlamydia. And other methods which can be used for synovial fluid is nested and semi-nested PCR for chlamydia, which needs to be validated. And what about, can we use a serological test for chlamydia trachomatis? The answer is no, because there will be a cross reaction with chlamydia, chlamydia pneumoniae, and also CTCA, which are respiratory pathogens. Whereas serological test for the Salmonella, Yersinia, and Campylobacteria are of no use because it will not differentiate the recent and the past infection. And most often it's commonly misused in our country. So imaging findings, the plain radiograph usually in the chronic reactive arthritis features usually suggestive of psoriatic arthritis, the newborn formation, and lytic lesion that usually seen in the chronic reactive arthritis, not in acute stage. So MRI usually of the pelvis will demonstrate the sacroiliitis. And what will be the differential diagnosis we should consider? If the patient presents with monoarticular form, then we should consider septic arthritis and do a synovial fluid analysis and rule out the septic arthritis. Whereas even the disseminated gonococcal arthritis presents similar to the reactive arthritis because they will have both the mucocutaneous manifestation, arthritis, and also they have a genitourinary manifestation, usually as a urethritis or a cervicitis. So nucleic acid amplification test for the gonococcal bacilli will rule out this condition. So other viral infection which can mimic the reactive arthritis is enterovirus and coxsackie They will have a gastroenteritis along with arthritis manifestation. And other thing which needs to be considered in Indian population, if they have a pretty young age, is that acute rheumatic fever and post-operative reactive arthritis, which usually have a preceding throat infection, which I will be discussing subsequently. How do we manage a case of reactive arthritis? Three things has to be addressed. One is treating the underlying infection, another is the articular manifestation. Next is extra-articular disease manifestation. So for antibiotic therapy, first we should prove there is inciting infection. Then we should give antibiotics, and what are the evidences for that? So in 2013, there is an RCT, systemic review and meta-analysis of 12 RCTs, which is done by the Claire E. et al. And published in a journal of rheumatology. And the pooled relative risk of failure to achieve the remission from random effect model showed no significant benefit of antibiotic therapy on the remission. And they concluded that no superior effect of antibiotic therapy and joint counts, pain, or overall patient assessment. But this systemic analysis itself had a few drawbacks, that they have a more heterogeneous study which was included, which are the different study design and also different inclusion criteria. Only one study which had a very significant or a positive effect, which I will quote in the next coming slide. And they also mentioned that if the antibiotic also used to cause more gastrointestinal adverse effects. This is the study which is done by the Carter, which they enrolled the 42 chronic reactive arthritis patient, which is confirmed by the positive PCR, and they were randomized to give doxycycline plus rifampicin and azithromycin plus rifampicin and placebo for a 6 months duration. And the primary composite endpoint, which includes decrease in the tendon and the swollen joint, and also the patient and physician global assessment, and which is achieved in 63% in the patients using an antibiotic compared to 20% of the patients who did not receive the antibiotic. Based on this study, they concluded that antimicrobial therapy should be recommended for a long term of 3 to 6 months, in the case of reactivitis triggered by the genitourinary infection. And also it can significantly shorten the time to remission. What is the evidence of the giving antibiotics in J triggered reactive arthritis? If you have a severe bacterial enteric infection at the presentation, so in that case only antibiotics can be given in those patients. But but not in a mild or a moderate cases. So for arthritis part, simple NSAIDs will be sufficient, at least for a 2 weeks duration. And naproxen with a good cardiovascular safety profile will be the first choice with a 2 weeks duration. And if that fails, you can switch to other NSAIDs and try for 2 weeks duration before considering it as a NSAIDs failure. Means you should try 2 different NSAIDs for at least 2 weeks each before considering the next treatment. So intra-articular steroid should be considered if there is a monoarticular and are one or two joints which are involved. Systemic steroids, the role is that in only severe polyarthritis, and if the patients are ocular and cardiac manifestation, then you go for a systemic steroids. But there is no definite guidelines or consensus about the dose and the duration. But if the expert says that at least 20 milligram should be used for 2 to 4 weeks in case of the mild cases and moderate cases. In case of severe cases, it should be the 40 milligram a day, should be tapered after a 1 month duration. So DMRs can be considered in the patients who are not responding to acute NSAIDs and glucocorticoid therapy. So which DMR we should consider? So there is a study done by the Danigo et al. In the patients of chronic reactive arthritis who had a mean duration of 10 years with NSAID failure. The patient were given a sulfasalazine at a dose of 2 grams per day in one arm and a placebo in the other arm, and they were followed up to 36 weeks duration. And at 36, they saw the tender and the swollen joint, and the response rate was 62%, 62.3% in sulfasalazine, and 47.7% in the placebo group. So, and also the C-reactive protein did not differ between the two groups, but the longitudinal analysis shows that there was a significant improvement in the sulfasalazine group when compared to the placebo. And what are the biological therapies which we should be considered? There is not responding to synthetic steroids. So the more evidences, more studies has been done in TNF alpha antagonist group than any other biologics. Initially, there are several case reports or small open label study which suggested clinical benefit. In such one open label study, where 16 patients were treated with etanercept, and out of which 10 had a complete responders, and 6 did not respond to the treatment. And a similar case series was reported where about 80 to 100% of the cases were has shown the improvement in the arthritis and also in the biological markers of inflammation. So the overall the effect is very favorable. You can consider as a TNF alpha blocker if the failure of synthetic DMARDs. And also there is a good efficacy in the extra articular manifestation, particularly the cutaneous. And what are the future therapies? Most models show the role of interleukin 17 and 23. As you know, the anti-interleukin 17 can exacerbate the IBD symptoms. So it is contraindicated in the reactive arthritis of gastrointestinal origin. And anti-interleukin 23 agents are not shown demonstrate efficacy in axial manifestation of spondyloarthritis. And the next coming, which are the small molecules which may change the future in rheumatology, is the JAK inhibitors. They are shown a certain efficacy in reactive arthritis, but we need more controlled studies to indicate it as one of the drug in case of TNF alpha failures. So that algorithm would be if you suspect a reactive arthritis, then you search for evidence of infection, either by the synovial analysis or by the stool culture or by the PCR in the urine or the cervical swab. If you there is positive result, give antibiotic course, either rifampicin, either with doxycycline or azithromycin for 3 to 6 months. If there is negative, actually prolonged antibiotic is not justified. So next is you treat with the trial of 2 different NSAIDs for 3 to 4 weeks. If the patient does not respond, then go for synthetic DMRs, especially the sulfasalazine. Even though methotrexate have failed in the clinical trials, experts say that it has a proven benefit in the clinical setup. So if the synthetic DMRs fail, then go for a biological therapy, that is a TNF-alpha inhibitors. So being a sporadic disease, and also most of the arthritis will resolve spontaneously, there is a less controlled study or randomized study. So whatever the evidence which is proposed by the European guideline and sexually acquired reactive arthritis, also known as SARA in 2014, it's a low evidence. So first we should consider an NSAIDs or intra-articular steroids, followed by the second line of therapy, which is systemic steroids and DMRs. And if they fail, then you need to consider biological DMRs. So search for an active infection and treat with the antibiotics. So other differentials which we need to consider is the acute rheumatic fever and post-streptococcal reactive arthritis. I grouped it in a same table because it's initiating agent is the same in the both, and they both have a similarities of the fever along with the raised inflammatory markers, and both will have a presence of arthritis. But the course is very different, and the prognosis is also quite different. So we need to differentiate between these two. So the acute rheumatic fever is an autoimmune disorder which occurs after the latency of 2 to 3 weeks after the inciting Streptococcus group A infection. Usually peaks in 4 to 9 years, and female are more affected. Here the arthritis is usually polyarthritis in about 60% of the patient, which is fleeting and migratory, and most of the cases it's self-limiting. So and a very good response to the salicylate. They have other manifestations such as erythema marginatum, which is usually seen late in the course, along with the Sydenham's chorea. So and carditis usually seen in young patients, was a valvular disease seen in the old patients. And we use a modified Jones criteria, which is modified in 2015, to diagnose acute rheumatic fever. Whereas post-streptococcal reactive arthritis usually occurs after at least after 10 days after the initiating the streptococcal infection, and it has a bimodal presentation, so in at least 8 to 14 years, and also in later point of the 21 to 37 years, and the incidence is equal in both the sexes. And the arthritis, unlike the acute rheumatic fever where we have fleeting and migratory, here it is additive and the prolonged, and all the patients should have arthritis for the diagnosis of post-streptococcal reactive arthritis, whereas in acute rheumatic fever it's seen about 70%. And unlike in acute rheumatic fever, here the arthritis is prolonged. More than 50% of the cases may have a symptom more than 6 weeks duration. Cutaneous manifestation uncommon, but erythema nodosum has been reported. And one of the cardiac manifestation, carditis has been described in children, but there is no evidence of valvular heart disease in adults. And there is no defined criteria, but one of the criteria they proposed was arthritis, evidence of a post-streptococcal infection along with arthritis, and they should not satisfy the modified Jones criteria. But that would overestimate underestimate the post-streptococcal reactive arthritis. As such, there is no defined validated criteria to diagnose post-streptococcal reactive arthritis, and the NSAID response is moderate when compared to the acute rheumatic fever. So as we are in the era of COVID-19, there are also case reports of reactive arthritis after COVID-19 infection. So this patient, here is one case report which was reported in BMJ in 2020, I think in June 2020, where a 50-year-old man presented with reactive arthritis about 1 week at a later point of the time, and his urine and the stool culture, urine swab, and synovial fluid analysis, and other autoimmune panel, which is ANA, rheumatoid factor, anti-CCP, everything was found to be negative, and it was presumed that it could be the secondary to the reactive arthritis caused by the COVID-19. Like we have a case report which with chikungunya and other measles and other virus which have been reported. So, but also positive, we could not, also being considered was the viral arthritis, which can directly infect the synovial tissue. So this is still a tricky situation, but as we may, in future we will get to know whether it can definitely cause a reactive arthritis or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Praveen, for the elaborative description of reactive arthritis. Recently, a couple of patients, I think you also might have seen after post-COVID infection, people coming with major joint pains and myalgia, abdominal symptoms and all these things. Can we all broadly classify them as post-COVID reactive arthritis, and what is the treatment?
Sir, that is the, we need to rule out whether there was, the arthritis symptom present at the time of the infection. If the patient had symptoms or if the patient had arthritis at that point of the time, it's unlikely the reactive arthritis. If there is at least a gap, then we can consider it as a reactive arthritis. But we don't have a definite evidences to say it causes a reactive arthritis. So in this case report also, they have excluded all the other causes of arthritis. And then come to the conclusion it is because of the COVID related to the COVID, and in that also they had a confusion it is because of the active viral arthritis, which we see in a chikungunya arthritis, or it because of the reactive arthritis. So that part was still difficult to answer, but
the disease is still evolving, isn't it? Like
yes, sir.
COVID, we still don't know. Like the post-COVID symptoms are also, they're still evolving.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Praveen, there are 3 questions in the chat for you.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
What is your opinion about use of antibiotics and hydroxychloroquine in reactive arthritis? I think antibiotics you've quite well covered. Maybe you can do HCQ part.
Yes, sir. Antibiotic, if you have a culture proven, definitely there is a evidence that it will shorten the time to remission and also improve the joint, so tender and the swollen joint counts. There is definitely the evidence is there, so especially in chlamydia reactive arthritis. As come to the gastrointestinal reactive arthritis, they say that only in case of evidence is very low, and if the patient has a severe enteral infection, then bacteria will, the antibiotics will definitely help in the resolution of the earlier resolution of the symptoms.
HCQ.
HCQ not come across any. No, sir. No.
So there are not much studies are there on HCQ and reactive.
Because they say that it's a sporadic, and also the most of the arthritis manifestation resolves with the NSAIDs. So
there is a question from Dr. Devraj Kori to you, asking if this chlamydia positive, then along with antibiotics, would you need DMRs as well?
No, sir. Initially, we should try NSAIDs for 2 weeks duration. If it does not respond, then we should switch to other different NSAIDs. If it is oligoarticular, then we can go for steroids. If this does not subside, then we need to consider DMRs.
Then there's another question which is asking you if in a patient suspected of reactive arthritis, the rheumatoid factor is positive in significant titers, how should one proceed further?
I think it should be at least more than 2 to 3 times, more than 3 times it should be elevated. Otherwise, we need to observe with whatever the medication we give, the NSAIDs. Just we need to observe the course and decide whether it is going to go well as a rheumatoid arthritis or it will be a reactive arthritis. And also we should ask for the previous infections details, whether there are any preceding enteritis or
I think anti-CCP also help to resolve the situation.
Yes, ma'am. Anti-CCP and ANA also will give a clue.
ANA probably not, but anti-CCP
definitely
will help. So will the pattern of infection.
And if there is a synovitis, an ultrasound.
Yes, absolutely. Just to tickle your brain, Dr. Praveen, do you think this nomenclature of reactive arthritis is right? Whether it should be expanded to include or changed to post-viral arthritis? Is this nomenclature really appropriate?
Yes, ma'am. Because of late we are seeing so many cases of arthritis triggered by a viral infection. And also they say the incubation period would last as a 3 days duration. So even the viral infection which are asymptomatic can trigger the infection. That time we need to include that also. So post-viral, apart from this bacterial origin. And also they mentioned about respiratory tract pathogens. They say about, chlamydia, CTC, and pneumonia and adenovirus. Few also been, but they are rarely been included in this category. But I feel what we see in day-to-day practice, we should also consider it as a post-reactive arthritis.
Yeah, so should we expand the definition of reactive arthritis?
Yes, ma'am. I feel so. We should expand.
Thank you.